Start taking care of your heart before it falls apart. Happy World Heart Day to all. Good morning to one and all present over here, and it gives me an immense pleasure to wish you all that we have such a bright and a hearty day. So before starting further, today 29th September is celebrated as World Heart Day all over the world. So let us take some time and focus on the importance of our heart and love our heart. So before proceeding further, let us welcome all our delegates who have taken time from their busy schedule and have been here. So foremost, I would like to welcome our resource person, the eminent and most knowledgeable person, Dr. S. Venkatesh, for being here. I welcome you, sir. Thank you, sir. Next, I would like to welcome our principal, Dr. S. Gajendra Singh, the principal of Abbey College of Nursing, for being here. I welcome you, sir. Next, I would also take an opportunity to welcome our Vice Principal, Mrs. Mamta Nishchal, Abbey College of Nursing. I welcome you, ma'am. And last, and but not the least, I would like to welcome all our delegates for being here. And I would really request you all to take some take-up points and make this webinar a useful one for you all. Proceeding further, no ceremony can go smoothly without an opening speech. So for that, in order to conduct a smooth conduction and for a good webinar, I would just like to call upon Mrs. Mamta Nishchal, the organizing secretary of this webinar, to give an inaugural speech to all.
A very good morning to one and all. Today we are here to celebrate World Heart Day. In fact, we are observing World Heart Day in a very crucial time of COVID-19 pandemic, and we have a very eminent personality amongst us as a resource person. First and foremost, I would like to welcome Dr. Venkatesh for having been concerned and having been obliged to be a resource person for today in his busy schedule. Thank you so much, sir. And my dear delegates, why we need to have an awareness on World Heart Day? What is that which is most important here? See, we have seen that earlier heart diseases used to be linked to the old age, or it used to be linked to the chronic illnesses, and so many, we had a myth about heart diseases that it comes only once a person is aged. So today in COVID situation, we have seen that a lady or who is aged around 90-year-old, she recovers, she battles, she fights against the COVID-19 and she comes back recovered completely. Whereas a young chap of 24 or 25 years, they succumb to the COVID-19 disease and they die. What is that which is happening? Why the younger generation is not strong to take up the certain disorders or certain pandemic conditions? What is that which is going wrong in their life is like the kind of stress they undergo in today's life situation. The stress may be in the workplace, the stress may be in their personal life, where they are not strong enough to face the stress. So today, why we need to create a awareness? Because most of the scenario we have seen, any death which occurs today, we try to link it to COVID-19. Whereas a person might have died because of heart disorder or maybe because of certain other comorbid conditions. But it is only the COVID-19 which comes to our mind. Okay, let us take that COVID-19 at that it's in its place. But how strong are we to face the situation is most important. So when it comes to that, we just see that heart is such a tiny organ and it supports us throughout the lifetime. And I don't think so, we don't even perform 1/10 of the function what the heart performs. How are we taking care of our heart? There are a lot of information on the media, on WhatsApp, on Google. Some messages say we need to walk half an hour in a day minimum. Some say no, 10 minutes of quick exercise is quite enough. So we are also getting misled by various other informations. So it is important us to understand what are the small lifestyle changes we need to bring in so that our heart is healthy enough to face the situation physically, mentally, emotionally, which is very much important today. So without taking much time, I really appreciate the team of our college who has supported me in organizing this. And I appreciate Dr. Venkatesh who has given the concern for being today's resource person. And let us listen to him. I make a kind appeal to all the participants. Please kindly unmute. Don't unmute yourself. Keep yourself muted. Don't share your screen. All your queries will be answered at the end of the session. So let us have a good and fruitful session, and let us make use of all the knowledge what is being imparted by Dr. Venkatesh to all of us. Have a good day. Thank you one and all. Over to you, Srimay.
In India, cardiovascular disease affects around 52% of the population. It is becoming the leading cause of the death. Major cardiovascular diseases that we see is either blockage or narrowing of the blood vessels, or whether the person is having chest pain, they are getting affected by stroke, and all this is occurring because of various reasons. We can avoid this reason, or we can avoid getting sick by, if the population becomes aware about the safety measures that we should follow in order to prevent any cardiovascular disease. So that is why this 29th September World Heart Day, they have given us a theme on which we are going to speak about, that is the use of heart to prevent or to fight against cardiovascular disease. So depending on this, that is why globally we celebrate this World Heart Day. So without taking much delay, I would like to introduce our resource person, the eminent and efficient cardiologist, Dr. S. Venkatesh, who will be sharing his knowledge and experience with us. Dr. S. Venkatesh is the lead interventional cardiologist in Aster RV Hospital, JP Nagar, and was head department of cardiology and a senior cardiologist in Fortis Hospital, Banaghatta. Sir did his MD in internal medicine from prestigious PGI-MER, where he was the batch topper and was the first order medal and won first order medal. He completed his DM cardiology from PGIMR, Chandigarh. We feel blessed and extremely happy to have you, sir, in this webinar so that we can gain some experience, or we can gain some knowledge to prevent this cardiovascular diseases. I would request all the participants to drop their queries in the chat box so that at the end of the session, we can take them out and we can ask sir for his valuable suggestions. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Srimay.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning, everybody. I wish you all a very happy World Heart Day. Professor Mamta set the ball rolling there, and she said that this is the time of the COVID pandemic, and there are concerns about the heart, both because of the COVID as well as our lifestyle. I think World Heart Day presents an ideal opportunity for us to discuss both these aspects which are in the forefront today. Now, the theme, as Srimay said, for this year's World Heart Day is use your heart to prevent cardiovascular disease. So when this kind of a slogan comes out, your imagination can run wild, and you can think of any imagery as to how we can use our heart to improve the cardiovascular status of people, or how to prevent heart diseases in the community. So we will be talking about that. Now, what I will do is that I'll divide this next, say, 25-30 minutes into 2 or 3 sections. One is the COVID and heart, and then heart disease itself. And then in the end, maybe about 20-25 minutes, we can have some question answer session, because I think it's most important that we address the issues which are burning in your hearts, rather than me saying whatever I feel like. So, as we all know that we are going through difficult times, the COVID pandemic has been around, and now because of various reasons, initially it was believed that COVID is a respiratory issue. The virus affects the lungs, but then gradually we have realized that the other organs are not immune as well. And one of the common thing which people have spoken about is that the heart gets involved as well. There is something called as COVID myocarditis, that is the muscle cells of the heart are inflamed by the virus or because of the immune mechanism. Because of that, there is heart dysfunction. And when the heart starts functioning abnormally, then the pumping comes down and the patient can have severe symptoms because of that. In addition, some other things have been noted, that is the COVID virus infection leads to increased tendency of the blood to clot in various places in the body, especially in the arteries and the veins. Because of that, a condition called as pulmonary embolism, that is clots in the lungs, as well as heart attacks and strokes have been noted during the COVID, in a patient with COVID infection. So COVID, due to various mechanisms, can affect the heart, and that has been a concern. But overwhelmingly, the problems of COVID are because of the lungs, and also there is something called as an extreme immune reaction, because of which patients have succumbed to this illness. So obviously, COVID is an important problem today as far as heart is concerned, as far as us cardiologists are concerned. However, during this pandemic, another thing concerns us heart doctors, cardiologists, and also physicians. What has been noted is, due to this pandemic, initially because of the lockdown, and subsequently because of the fear that if we go to the hospitals, we may not be, we may be exposed to COVID infection in those hospitals. And also some of the patients felt that if we go to the hospital and we are tested and the test comes out as positive, whether truly positive or false positive, it becomes an inconvenience, and then we may have to be quarantined and isolated. So these fears were on the rise in the initial part of the pandemic. Because of that, what happened, many of the patients who required routine monitoring of their blood pressure, of their heart condition, refilling of their medications, adjustment of their medication doses, etc., would not come to the hospital or would not go to the clinics of their doctors. In fact, in the very beginning, some of the patients, especially those who are in the rural areas and all, had difficulty in accessing medicines and blood tests, etc. So this led to a lot of fluctuations in their stable heart condition. Also, during the 6 months, what we have seen is patients who have developed heart emergencies, like somebody had a heart attack or somebody developed a severe breathing difficulty because of a heart disease, but not because of COVID. Such patients have remained in the house, not seeking medical help in appropriate time, and therefore either losing their lives at home or reaching the hospitals late, so that complications have set in and treatment of such patients has become difficult for doctors to implement. So this kind of patients not coming to the hospital both for their routine follow-ups and for emergencies has been a bigger problem during the COVID pandemic for the heart patients and heart diseases. Now, at the outset, I would like to reassure you that over 6 months, all medical professionals, all medical institutions, clinics have understood how the pandemic behaves, how the virus transmits, and how we can be protected from it. And therefore, everyone has made some arrangements for patients to come into the hospitals and clinics and be treated. For example, at Aster RV Hospital in JP Nagar, we have devised methods where a COVID positive patient does not come in contact with a COVID negative patient. The hospital has been divided into 3 zones. One zone is COVID positive. There is a ward which is COVID positive ward, where patients who have COVID disease or who have turned positive of COVID are admitted. Similarly, there is a COVID ICU where patients are taken care, COVID positive patients are taken care. Parallelly, there is a non-COVID ward where COVID negative patients who have been proven to have no COVID disease, both by their symptoms as well as by tests, they are admitted and treated. They are treated for their usual gallbladder surgeries or bypass surgeries, or even infections and other things. So whatever usually used to go on in the hospitals before the COVID pandemic continues to happen in the COVID negative ward for the COVID negative patients. Similarly, there is a parallel ICU, which is a non-COVID ICU, where patients with head injuries or abdominal issues or who have had heart attacks, these patients are taken care so that they are safe from the COVID patients. Now, at the same time, the staff members who attend to COVID patients do not go and attend the COVID negative patients. Similarly, none of us who see COVID negative patients on a given day would go and see the COVID positive patients on the same. So there is no intermingling of either patients or staff members. In some cases, when the patients come in an emergency, or when we see a patient and we have to admit the patient in a ward or an ICU, but the COVID status is not known, there is a third zone. This is an intermediate zone, which is a kind of a buffer zone where patients are kept in individual rooms in isolation. Even in the ICU, there are isolation ICUs where an individual patient is separately taken care so that the patients cannot come out, or the staff members who attend to them cannot go out and attend to the COVID negative or COVID positive patients. So that if that patient who has come, whose status of COVID we do not know, neither gets COVID from an existing COVID patient, nor can transmit it to a COVID negative patient if that person carries the COVID. So this kind of segregation of wards and ICUs have happened in our hospital. Similarly, I am sure it has happened in every healthcare institution across the country. And therefore, I can confidently say that today, if there is an emergency or even a routine evaluation that is required, hospitals are safe. Hospitals, patients can come to the hospitals and get their routine and emergency treatment. In fact, we have been all working in the hospital. I have been working for the last 6 months amidst COVID patients. I have treated a lot of patients with COVID. My team has treated a lot of COVID patients. Majority of the healthcare workers across the country remain COVID negative because of the precautions they take and because of such segregation of patients. In fact, even for the healthcare workers and then for the patients, it is said that the highest risk of developing COVID or contracting COVID is not inside the hospitals or the clinics. In fact, it is outside in the community. When they go to grocery shopping or when they go to meet people, that is when they develop COVID. So therefore, I would like to assure on behalf of all medical professionals and especially Aster RV Hospital that there are arrangements for patients to be taken care. So if you or your near and dear ones have any problem, please come to the hospital without hesitation, without delay, so that we can take care of such patients very well. Other than that, the precautions, what are we taking? You know, how do we, healthcare professionals in the middle of COVID, in fact, some of the nurses, doctors are doing extraordinary job of being posted inside the COVID ICU. And they're in the midst of so many patients with COVID, yet they have protected themselves. So how do we do that? So there are 3 mantras which I think we all should understand. It is not that everyone has to wear a PPE kit. PPE doesn't mean the entire astronaut suit that has to be worn. PPE means personal protective equipment. It depends on what kind of a situation we are in. Let us say we are going to meet someone. A simple mask is enough. That is a personal protective equipment. Sometimes we are going to handle some material which might be potentially infected. Only then the gloves will come in. Only when we are dealing with patients who are on a ventilator or who has to get a nebulization where aerosol production happens, that is when probably the whole PPE kit has to be worn. So there are different level of personal protection we can take. And therefore, the mantras for us from protecting ourselves as medical professionals and as lay people, we are also lay people by the time, at the same time as we are medical professionals. We also go out to the grocery store. We also go and meet our friends and family when it is absolutely necessary. So we have to know these 3 things. One of them is masks. Another of them is hand sanitization. And third one is social or physical distancing. So we all know that masks protect. There is no doubt about it. We have all worn masks throughout this pandemic, and none of us, many of my team members, they have all not turned positive. So that means masks do protect even in hospital setting where there are high incidence of high chances of contracting COVID. People who go out should wear masks and go. And what we should understand is, how do we wear the masks? This mask etiquette is the most important thing. We have to wear the masks and get out of the house. And the mask should cover the nose, the mouth, and the chin. And for any reason, we should not adjust, touch, or remove the mask when we are in public. That defeats the whole purpose of wearing a mask. In the event that it is absolutely necessary for us to remove the mask, what we need to do is carry a hand sanitizer or go to a nearby sink with a soap, wash our hands first, and holding the straps, remove the mask, do whatever is required. For example, one has to eat or has to have a beverage, so that has to be finished, and the mask has to be put back, and then once again the hand has to be washed or sanitized thoroughly. So this mask etiquette is very important. We go out onto the streets and we see people wearing their masks on their chin or on one of the ears, and somebody is carrying it in the pocket. The most annoying thing is, as doctors we see, and also you would see probably when people come to meet you, that when they come towards you from a far distance, they are wearing the mask. The moment they come to you, they take down the mask and start talking to you as if they cannot talk without the mask on, or if they as if they want you to recognize them. That's very dangerous. So therefore, all of us have to understand that we should wear masks when we go out and in the proper way. At the same time, it is also our responsibility to avoid those people who do not wear masks. It has now become a fashion. Some of these people are sending messages on the social media, videos are being made saying that masks are a conspiracy. We are not going to wear masks. It's against our freedom or something like that. So such people are a danger to the society, especially if they are having COVID. Otherwise, they can contract COVID and give it to someone else. There are many young people who think that they are immune to COVID, therefore we will not wear the masks, but they don't understand that they can contract COVID and give it to a person who is vulnerable. For example, a grandparent at home. So therefore, it is very important for us also to educate others. How is it done? It's very simple. You refuse to talk to a person or you refuse to interact with a person who does not wear masks. Then the message goes out loud and clear that we all have to wear masks. And that is how, as citizens, as individuals, we can enforce this rule, even though we do not have the legal authority to enforce it on anybody. But we can exercise our freedom of choice of not interacting with a person who's wearing a mask. So, who's not wearing a mask. So I think this is one of the important things. What kind of masks have to be used is a common question. Cloth masks are good. They can be worn and they can be washed. These surgical masks and N95 masks are usually restricted or at least reserved for medical professionals like yourself. If you're in the nursing profession, when you go and see the patients, you may want to wear N95 masks or even a surgical mask, depending on the kind of patients you are interacting with. But even cloth masks will be fine. Cloth masks are good because they can be washed with soap and water every day and they can be reused. If we have to reuse these surgical masks and N95 masks, we have to make sure that these masks, once they are removed after a day's use, have to be put in a paper bag or in a drawer and closed for 48 hours at least. So before that, if it is exposed to the house, the virus, if it is there on the mask, can spread. And if we reuse the same mask every day, then we are at the risk of transmitting the virus to others or ourselves. So therefore, whenever you plan to use these kind of disposable masks, if at all it has to be reused, like surgical masks or N95 masks, I suggest there are 3 masks. On Monday, you wear a mask and go, come back and put it in a paper bag, label it as number 1. On Tuesday, you do the same, label it as number 2. And Wednesday, you do the same and label it as number 3. And on Thursday, you can go back and pick up the labeled number 1 labeled mask and reuse, because 72 hours, if there has been a virus on that mask, it would have been inactivated by the time. So that's very important. The other important thing is, it is not practical for us to wear gloves and go out in the public. So when we touch, it is believed that there could be some viruses, though it has not been proven. Therefore, whenever we touch something or somebody, if there is absolutely no choice, then I think the hand sanitization, either with a sanitizer, alcohol-based sanitizer, or preferably soap and water for about 20 seconds and thoroughly washing hands, like how they show in videos. You can access the videos and learn, and you can sanitize your hands frequently. I'm sure these things are very well known. The third thing, social distancing or even physical distancing is also very important. We see people are going out, and many times they have to go out. But physical distancing starts with not going unnecessarily outside. If at all somebody has to be met, it has to be met, those people have to be met at a distance. If we are meeting anybody in closed doors, we have to both wear masks. Both the people who are interacting should wear masks and should spend as less time as possible within a closed space. They say that 15 minutes, if you are in a room with another person, the chances of increasing transmission is higher. So therefore, try to keep the interactions minimum. Try avoiding shaking hands or hugging and other physical contact. Wear masks and keep a distance. If you are going out for a jog or a walk, we suggest don't wear N95 masks. Other masks could be worn. Some people tend to walk or run without masks. It's not advisable, but if there is probably nobody in that vicinity, it may not be too unsafe, though it is generally not recommended. One of the things Professor Mamta said was that how is it that a 90-year-old person survives a COVID, but a young person is succumbing to it? So I think the answer is multifactorial. There could be some metabolic problems, immunity problems with young people. Some of the young people's stress may play an important role, as she rightly pointed out. But one other thing which we have thought of and we think is happening is what is called as viral load. Typically, what is happening is people who are younger are the ones who are going out meeting other people. So they are directly exposed to people with patients with COVID, and if they get the COVID virus into their faces or into their respiratory passages, the number of viral particles are likely to be higher. So this is called as viral load. The higher the viral load, it seems that the severity of the viral infection is higher. Whereas when they go back home, a 90-year-old grandma is sitting in the corner room, and in our culture, typically I have seen that we don't go and interact too closely with people inside the house. We don't have the culture of going back home and hugging our parents, our grandparents, our children all the time. So there is a safe distance usually, and therefore, if I go outside, I contract a virus directly, and I transmit it to my family member who is in a corner room, the amount of virus I transmit to that person will be smaller. Therefore, the lower viral load is helping the older people survive. This is, I think, the only issue. But that doesn't mean that young people will not recover. In fact, a majority of young people will be asymptomatic and have mild disease. It also doesn't mean that old people cannot succumb. So therefore, I think while this is true that nowadays, because of various reasons, younger people also are getting seriously ill, it is important to understand that we should try and avoid this contracting this infection in the first place, and for that masks, physical distancing and hand washing are important techniques that we need to point out. On the other side, as pointed out, there is definitely a rise in the number of heart disease patients in the country. India has now what is called as the diabetes capital. That means our lifestyle has changed in the last 3 decades. Because of that, we have all become overweight. Many of us, the amount of overweight and obesity which was there in the, say, last 50 years ago is definitely now, this has increased. In addition, our eating habits have changed. Our physical activity has reduced. Our habits such as excessive alcohol intake, smoking, tobacco use has also increased. Concomitantly, lifestyle diseases like hypertension, cholesterol problems, and diabetes has increased. All of that, and of course, as mentioned, huge amount of stress at both domestic as well as workplace. Overall, all of these contribute to an increased number of heart diseases in the society, hypertension and heart disease. We need to mitigate that, and this is where the slogan comes in: use heart to beat heart disease. Now, how do you do that? One is, I think we should be brave during this. Our hearts have to be brave. We should bravely face this pandemic, number one. Number two, we should boldly go to the hospitals and medical professionals to seek medical attention wherever it is required, whether it is a routine or whether it is a emergency. In fact, in routine, we also have video consultations which can be made use of, and that is also quite okay. But otherwise, we have to be bold in going out and taking care of our own hearts. So this is one thing. Next is, we have to use our heart with compassion and love. There are people around us, there are elderly around us, there are vulnerable people around us. They need to be protected by our compassion. We don't have to put them into risk. So we have to practice these measures to reduce the COVID infection in the community. We have to behave like responsible citizens. We have to use the masks and physical distancing and hand washing, especially when such vulnerable people are around. So this part of our compassion should come in. Also, in our homes, in our neighborhoods, there could be vulnerable people who become unwell, who may not have the wherewithal or who may not have the facility to go on their own to the hospitals. So we could take responsibility. We should not shun them saying that, oh, I don't want to go to a patient and take them into a hospital because I might get COVID from either that person or when I go to the hospital. I think we need to shed that fear. We need to exercise our love and compassion for our community and go there and help out these people. In addition, we also can use our heart intuitively in devising methods to reduce, to spread the message of how heart disease can be reduced. We can educate others where we know about healthy diet, about exercise. We can educate people about not taking up habits such as smoking. We can educate people about that they have to take care of their medical conditions. And these measures we can do out of our interest, our love, our hearts, so that people around us are aware of how to do things. And lastly, our heart likes certain things like hobbies, music, and these can go a long way. Many of these things, reading, writing, etc., can go a long way in reducing the stress in our body. So use what your heart likes. So with all these uses of the heart, we can reduce not only the cardiovascular disease burden in the society, and at this time when the country and the world is going through a strife, we can also reduce the burden of COVID infection and the complications arising out of it with our hearts. So I will stop here. I have covered the main basic issues. I think the one other thing which I would like to tell about is vaccine. A lot of people are, waiting for the vaccine. They think that, once the vaccine comes, we take the vaccine and then we can, avoid social distancing, etc. Something which I would like to tell you is some time before we can lay hands on our vaccine. Vaccines are still being developed. Remember that we should understand that vaccines have two parts to them. One is when we take a vaccine, is it safe for us? And two, when we take the vaccine, is it effective in protecting against the disease? These are the two aspects which we have to understand. Now, usually when a vaccine is being developed, both the safety of the vaccine as well as its effectiveness, or what we call as efficacy, is tested. How do we test the efficacy of a vaccine? You have a number of people, you divide them into two groups. For one group, you give the vaccine, another group, you don't give the vaccine. And then they are in the community, and after a year or 2 years or some period of time, we check them as to how many of them developed the infection, how many of them did not develop the infection with and without vaccine. If at all, it is seen that out of the people who received the vaccine, less number of people developed infection than the people who did not get the vaccine. Then we say, oh, the vaccine has protected this number of people. So that is when we say this vaccine is effective. Obviously, it needs time. It needs clinical studies. So whenever vaccines are developed, the government, the authorities say that the companies which make the vaccines have to prove both the safety as that, you give a vaccine and the patient develops some complication. It should not become like that. So that has to be proven, and they also have to prove that it is effective. But in a pandemic-like situation where the world is under such a throes, what governments and authorities have said is, okay, you don't have to really prove that they are effective in populations. You show that when you inject, immunity develops by doing blood tests, but prove that it is safe. So the vaccine development process has been cut short. So we are basically looking at some effectiveness in terms of blood reports and safety of these vaccines. So the vaccines which come, are they going to be truly effective is only to be seen over a period of time once the vaccines are being given. Most of the vaccines are still in that stage of development. They are not commercially available. And remember that the world population is 7 billion, and 7 billion vaccine doses will not be ready the moment these vaccines are approved. What will happen is the vaccines will be manufactured in limited quantities initially, and when that happens, the frontline workers, maybe people who are going to be in busy areas, healthcare workers, these are the people who are going to get the vaccine first, and then it will go into the hands of lay public, because so many vaccine doses have to be manufactured. We are hopeful that the vaccine developed in Europe or the vaccine developed in Russia will be available to us. But remember that even these geographies, Europe or Russia, have large populations. Once their vaccine is successful, they are going to make millions of doses of vaccine for their own population first, and then they will be able to give it to us. So none of us should be under that impression that this vaccine is going to be ready, and therefore in a short time, after 2 months, we are going to be free from this COVID. COVID is not going to go anywhere. The cases are still rising. India is inching towards being the #1 in terms of number of cases. Can that mic be muted, please? So,
I would mute yourself.
So the vaccine will be available much later. COVID is still on the rise. This infection is not going to go away anytime soon. It may be 6 months or even a year before we can kind of relax and say, okay, things are in a better shape. Therefore, we have to do our jobs. We have to go back to our universities, where we have to go back to our colleges. We have to go back to our workplaces. We also, man is a social being. We also have to have our recreations. We have to go back to sports. We have to go back to, purchasing and all other activities. These are economic activities as well. If a mall closes down, it's not just that the shopkeepers suffer, but the manufacturers suffer. So the entire economy, it's a chain that works. Therefore, consumerism, which has been completely stopped, has to come back to a reasonable extent. If not luxury, at least essential items have to be shopped for. Therefore, all of these things which form a part of the society has to be restarted. So we can't wait for the COVID to go away and then we will bring back our society and bring back our economy. But carefully, with our responsibility, we must be able to venturing out slowly, because we know that it is not going to go away. And we should learn how to live with it for some time at least. And that's the important thing about vaccines. So I will stop here, and I will be very happy to take up questions, because I think that is the more important part of my agenda. One-way lectures, whatever I said is all available on the internet if anybody can patiently go through. But what is very important is, what are your questions? So please go ahead, and if there are questions in the chat box, or if any of the delegates have any questions that can be sent to the chat box here, and then I can answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. It was really a very informative and a nice session. We are sorry for the disturbance that happened previously, but we learned a lot from the 3 mantras that you told, because previously we'll always think that yes, we have to be covered completely with PPE and all, but it is a great thing that you told that with mask also, with our safety, with a courageous heart, with a bold heart, we can fight well against Corona. That is really a wonderful message. Then I would really like, if anyone has any queries, they can put it into the chat box. Okay, so within the timing, I would like to ask, Kwanzaa, generally people say that if there is stress or something, eventually we start, over a period of time, we will be having this dyspnea, we will be feeling, then we will start getting chest pain and all. Is it a sign that it may be that later period of life we are going to develop certain cardiovascular disease, or it is just for the time period because we are stressed?
I think stress acts in a number of ways. One of the things which is known with acute stress is that, supposing somebody has a heart disease when we talk about heart disease, we are basically talking about blocks which are developed in the heart. So if there are some of the cholesterol depositions which are developed in the heart, these are generally hardened and they are covered by a layer of tissue called as the endothelium. What is known is extreme physical stress or extreme psychological stress can sometimes break the endothelium, that is the covering on top. Because of that, inside the blood vessel, the cholesterol comes out and comes into the contact with the blood. So this forms clots. This is called as a ruptured plaque. The cholesterol plaque which is there inside the artery can rupture if there is extreme physical stress or extreme psychological stress. So please remember, stress just doesn't mean mental stress. We know that recently somebody who was on a cycling race collapsed. We also know that people who suddenly do some extreme physical activity can also, people collapsing on the football field, etc. These can happen. So therefore, physical stress also can be an important thing. So stress in general can precipitate an existing heart disease by cause of ruptured plaque. Otherwise, stress is also an inflammatory condition. It goes on building up over a period of time and can lead to some metabolic diseases, is what is said. The third thing is stress often leads to symptoms of anxiety, symptoms of palpitation, symptoms of undue breathing difficulty, etc. So such patient may not be actually having a heart disease, but the heart symptoms can be mimicked. And such patients get worried that they have a heart disease and go to the hospital, and there they are treated. So such stress in the long run can play havoc to the mental health of the patient. So therefore, this stress has to be dealt with. So stress is an important cause of symptoms, both because of the stress itself as well as sometimes it can cause heart disease.
So it means that minor chest pain, if it is there, it is not that the person in the later period can get cardiovascular disease. It's not like that. It is just for the time being, as we are coping up with that.
Yeah, whenever there is chest pain, we have to understand whether it is related to the heart or not. There are a lot of other tissues in the chest area, the skin, the bones, the lungs, the ribs, nerves, so many other tissues. So chest pain invariably does not mean heart disease or heart attack alone. So
Yes.
when chest pain is there, one has to get it checked. If the kind of a pain which is not related to heart keeps recurring, it may not lead to a heart attack later. So whether if it's a heart disease pain, if it keeps recurring, obviously it's important. But if it is not related to, for example, somebody has a esophageal reflux and therefore there is always a heartburn because of spicy food and all that. So one need not be worried about it. Of course, they have to be treated, but one need not be worried about the heart disease part in those conditions.
Yes. Thank you, sir. So there is another question, question from Chandran A. It is like, how is the newborn being protected when the mother is in COVID ward?
That's a good question, because now, pregnant women are coming to hospitals for delivery. So if there is a COVID positive patient, we are delivering in our hospital COVID positive patients. What is known is that the COVID infection is not transmitted from mother to child. It's not a direct transmission. So the baby, if at all the baby has to contract COVID, it has to be still through the respiratory passage. So what is being done is initially expressed breast milk is fed. Therefore, the newborn is away from the mother for a short period of time. Subsequently, when the mother goes home, what is being done is that while the baby is being breastfed, the mother wears masks and preferably some kind of a barrier between the mother and the baby is kept, so that, like a face shield or something, so that the risk of transmission to the baby is not there. And after that, the baby is nursed or taken care separately for the time period. So maybe around 2 weeks or 3 weeks for the time in which the infectivity is highest. If these the mother and baby are kept reasonably away, then the baby can be protected from COVID infection.
It's a great information that virus does not transmit through the through the breast milk. It is
Yes,
not
also.
getting transferred. It is a good thing. So there is another question from Kiran Ulanganathan. That is, how effective is yoga to prevent heart disease, and is it advisable for the people with existing heart disease to practice yoga?
So yoga is a great form of exercise, has been there for several thousand years. Directly will yoga prevent heart disease is not proven, like how we prove with certain things like, control of diabetes, control of heart disease, hypertension directly prevents heart disease. Like that, research trials are there. With yoga, there has not been such kind of trials, simply because it's difficult to conduct them. How do you monitor thousands of people and they have to do yoga every day, and over years we have to see whether the heart disease is prevented or not. So what we say is yoga is safe to be practiced during in heart patients. There are some patients who are extremely sick, who are just out of the hospital, or who have great amount of symptoms. In those patients, we say try and avoid doing anything strenuous. But even them, they can do simple breathing exercises, pranayamas, or sitting in certain postures. Those things they can do. But in general, yoga is safe for heart disease as much as the heart disease permits that person to do. Whether it prevents heart disease or not is not known. I won't say it won't prevent. I won't say at the same time, some people do this, that I don't want to take any medicines. I will practice yoga and prevent heart disease. So that may be a little bit far-fetched. So that may not be a best. So you can complement both. If preventive medicines are given, those can be taken. In addition, yoga can be practiced. There is absolutely no problem with that.
Yes, sir. So yoga is somewhere additional to that. Yes, sir. Thank you. So another question from Mamta ma'am, that is, how safe is it to take a morning or evening walk in the parks in COVID situations, sir?
It's quite safe actually. The thing is, there are two issues. One is that the virus is, it comes as a droplet infection. That is, if somebody coughs or sneezes in front of you, it can get into your system. The other thing which is also known is that these viruses are airborne and this remains suspended in the air for some time. I mean, there are debates about how much time and all that. But at the same time, airborne particles, the viral dose is likely to be very less. So in open spaces, practically not much transmission has been seen unless people are crowded together. So therefore, you can safely undertake walks in the park. Only thing is, don't go in groups or huddles. Don't meet people there. Don't sit together. The laughter club and all those things are going to be a little bit of a problem. At safe distances, wearing a thin cloth mask, not exerting yourself too much, I don't think there is any problem in going for morning and evening walks in the park. One thing which I would definitely advise is, please do not wear N95 masks and walk, or definitely do not jog, because N95 masks are for medical processes, and there are people who have had difficulty in breathing with an N95 mask, especially when they're jogging, and they've had problems. Otherwise, they are very safe for routine, wearing and working, like how doctors and nurses do, but they are not for walking and jogging. So walking in the park is quite safe. Wear masks, keep distance from people, don't be in huddles, and open spaces are quite safe.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Another question from Aishwarya Ray. When a COVID-affected patient expires, people are reluctant to touch the patient, and we have heard a lot of news about that too. So is that if a dead corona patient is coming in touch or in contact with any healthy person and all, the person is getting a chance to, that the person will also get affected? Like, is it a notion or is it true that really with a dead body who is affected with corona will get affected? It will affect the other person or the healthy person even.
I think, see, this is my personal opinion.
Yes,
I think it is quite safe to touch, people who have passed away, as long as, we don't fall on them and we don't hug them, which, is seen in some of the situations. That is one. It is like touching any other person. You shake hands with somebody. If any touch is it happens, it doesn't mean that automatically the viruses are transmitted, especially if we are able to take care of ourselves, take bath. For example, when we work in the hospital, when we go back home, we all take showers. So if those are practiced, if the person who is going to those areas and touching the patient's dead body is wearing masks, and making sure that hand is sanitized later, I think it is quite safe. But one of the reasons why this is all kind of restricted is burial of COVID patients who expired ensures that the virus is around in the environment for a longer period of time, unlike in cremation. Number one. Number two, whenever there is a cremation or a kind of a final rites movement, people tend to gather, and people tend to, even if not from the person who was expired, we can transmit amongst ourselves. So as a matter of reducing the number of people around, also it is there. So I think it is not necessary that we will contract, but I think it is a sensible thing to do, to try and avoid touching. If it has to be wear those gears. I mean, now so BBMP doesn't allow you to go anywhere near a patient's body unless the PPE kit is worn, because if not to you, you can transmit to someone else. So these rules are there. It could be a notion. I agree with that, but that is how it is.
So there is a last question by Ms. Karuna Sutra, that is it possible that a cloth mask can carry virus for 72 hours?
Yes, if it is not washed. Any object can carry the virus for that much time. Cloth mask can also carry. It is just that cloth masks are reusable because they are washable. So when you go back for home, so take the cloth mask directly into the sink, put an abundant amount of soap, wash it thoroughly, and then dry it, and it is ready to reuse, because soap is known to inactivate the virus. But if the cloth mask is taken and hanged in the almirah, then the chances of it spreading it to the rest of the clothes and rest of the environment in the house is there. So therefore, let's see if there is any other interesting question, because we have another 3-4 minutes.
Yes, sir. There is
young children not severely affected. Is it? Does pneumonia vaccine affect in worsening the corona infection? No, there is no such information on that. Pneumonia vaccine does not cause any adverse problems in these patients. Patients having heart disease develop nerve or sensory problems later. No, unlikely. Drug overdose. No, I do not know of any heart disease medicines which can make nerve problem or the sensory problem. Steam therapy. Now, this is an important question.
Yes, sir. Therapy can help to prevent corona.
So, no, it is not proven. In fact, steam is good if you take steam inhalation, but if you are steaming yourself with red hot steam, and it could be harmful. There are people who try to gargle with very hot water, and then there are a lot of other things which have been used. The immune booster medications which are available, immune booster tea, immune booster bread, everything is available. Now, and these medicines like Coronil and all that are also available. So none of them are proven to be effective. So you have to, you want to do some kashayam, or you want to put some turmeric and all that and drink in milk, it's fine. There are reports where excessive herbal medication have caused complications. That is also there. But at the same time, if any of these safe home remedies you want to practice for your own symptoms, for example, mild cold is there with corona, and you take some milk in haldi, which is a common thing done, or some ginger kashayam or something other which you want to do, there is absolutely no harm in doing so. However, we should not believe that these are going to improve our immunity, and therefore, I will avoid masks, avoid social distancing. That is not a good idea. So please do whatever you think home remedies are required, but at the same time, do not harm yourself with something like toilet cleaner gargling, or gargling with very hot water, or excessive steam which can damage your respiratory passages. So these can be avoided. At the same time, you can use all the home remedies to improve your symptoms, but please do not believe that there is going to be a decrease in corona. There's one important question which I'll answer before we close. If you have one more, you can get ready, but I'll answer one important question which I saw, that is, what happens if triglycerides are high? It's a very, very important question. We know that high cholesterol, especially the total cholesterol and LDL cholesterol, are associated with high amount of heart disease and stroke, etc.
Yes.
On the other hand, what has been not proven is high triglycerides will lead to heart disease directly. So very high triglycerides by themselves do not cause heart disease. Meaning which, but if somebody has a high triglyceride, treating the triglyceride with tablets and bringing down the triglycerides will not protect such patient. What is triglyceride? Triglycerides are not a part of the conventional cholesterol, that is LDL, HDL, and total cholesterol, etc. They are, in fact, more closely associated with the glucose metabolism, carbohydrate metabolism. Triglycerides is an indicator that our lifestyle has not been good. We have not been eating healthy. We have been smoking too much. We have not been exercising well. We probably have been drinking too much. These are the issues which associate themselves with high triglycerides. So bringing down the triglycerides without impacting these cause of high triglycerides will not protect the person from heart disease is what I'm saying. So triglycerides directly do not cause any heart disease, but triglycerides indicate to us that our lifestyle is not good and we need to get on to healthy habits. At the same time, when the triglycerides are very high, some people say 400, some people say 500, some people say 1000, it can affect our pancreas and cause problems. Therefore, very high triglyceride levels are treated with medicines. It's not that there is no need for medication for triglyceride, but if somebody's triglyceride is, let us say, 250 or 300, that is probably not directly going to cause a heart disease, but it marks that the person's lifestyle is not good and we need to focus on that lifestyle. One more question.
So there is a last question that they are saying is it is believed that young children are not severely affected by corona, nor is it fatal to them. So how true is it?
I don't think we can make any generalization. Yeah, people of all ages have been affected with various severity. There have been, yes, the number of fatalities are low. That is definitely there. So, I mean, you can always say that young children may have less amount of infection, but that is not been proven. Typically these days children have remained indoors. This question becomes important because school reopening and all depend on this. But what we need to understand is, unlike nuclear families elsewhere, in our society there is a lot of joint families. Grandparents stay with the children in the house. So when schools reopen, the children go home, go to the school. You know that how when one child has common cold, many of their classmates develop common cold. Similarly, if one child's family is affected, the chances that COVID infection comes to other children in the school class, and then they bring it back, and our vulnerable people can get impacted. Here also there is overcrowding in our society. In the West, any child who is above 9 years will have his or her own room, whereas in our families it is not like that. Children are with us. The number of rooms in our houses are not that many. So there is always social distancing within houses is always a problem. So it's not as simple as understanding that the children are protected so they can do what they want. They also have, like other younger adults, they also have this responsibility of having to protect themselves, because we have to protect the children as well, because they can amplify the infection. So that is what is the current thinking. Whether this is real, whether we should actually allow the schools to reopen and children can go safely, and that will not increase the community burden of COVID, is all not really understood well. The models in the West are being studied, and until then, I think we should not assume that children are protected. They cannot have fatalities. In a given child, if less immunity, this can happen. If a high viral load is there, it can happen. So we have to be careful, though it may be true that the severity may be less, but we can't take a chance in our individual child.
That was really very, very informative, and I guess you have questioned I have answered almost every question, sir. Thank you so much for so much of time of yours. We're really grateful to you. So at last, I would like to call upon Mrs. Lindsay Verghese, lecturer, Abbey College of Nursing, to render vote of thanks and to thank all the delegates, and especially to you, sir, for giving your valuable time to us in this webinar.
A warm and graceful morning to all. It's my privilege to propose a vote of thanks and acknowledge the contribution of those who worked really hard to make this World Heart Day celebration happen. On behalf of RB College of Nursing, I extend my heartfelt thanks to Dr. S. Venkatesh, interventional cardiologist, Astar RB Hospital, for his wonderful section and for finding some time from his busy schedule. Thank you so much, sir. I also extend my sincere thanks to Mr. Samson Moses, Assistant Manager Marketing Team, Astar RB Hospital, for his kind support. Thanks to our principal, Dr. Gajendra Singh, for his valuable guidance and moral support. I also express my thanks to our social media team of RB College of Nursing for their untiring efforts and dedication. Thank you to all the faculty of RB College of Nursing for your cooperation to make this webinar a success. Last but not the least, thanks to all the delegates for joining this webinar and spending your valuable time with us. Have a very nice rest of the day. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Bye.